This is gonna blow your mind. Within a day of assuming office, President Donald Trump announced his intention to levy a 25% tariff on every import from Canada. The administration cited concerns regarding illegal immigration and the influx of fentanyl into the United States as the primary drivers behind this decision. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt stressed that the tariffs would persist until Canada resolved these issues. Additionally, the administration expressed its desire to promote domestic manufacturing and cut dependence on foreign imports. By imposing these tariffs, the objective is to motivate companies to shift production to the United States, thereby generating jobs and strengthening the national economy. In late January, President Trump proposed that Canada could evade the looming 25% tariffs on its exports by becoming the 51st U.S. state. He argued that such a change would yield substantial tax cuts and improved healthcare for Canadians. Trump remarked that Canadian citizens, if that happened, would receive a very big tax cut, a tremendous tax cut, because they are so highly taxed, and they would enjoy much better health coverage. I think the people of Canada would appreciate it, he added. This proposal formed part of a broader strategy by President Trump to use economic measures to influence international relations. He had earlier signaled his intention to enforce steep tariffs on Canada and, on January 7, 2025, declared his aim to employ economic force to prompt Canada into joining the United States. Trump maintained that a merger would enhance national security and lower U.S. spending on border protection. Canadian officials quickly dismissed the idea of statehood. Former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland retorted, "President Trump, Canada is not for sale. We are strong, independent, and will never allow your health insurers to profit off Canadians." The United States and Canada share one of the globe's most extensive and intertwined trading relationships. As of 2023, bilateral trade in goods and services was approximately $923 billion, with U.S. exports to Canada reaching $441 billion, and imports from Canada totaling $482 billion, resulting in a U.S. trade deficit of $41 billion. Automotive trade between the two nations remains a cornerstone of their economic bond, with considerable exchanges in vehicles and auto parts. In 2023, the United States imported about 34.87 million cars and vehicles designed for transporting people from Canada. During the same year, U.S. exports to Canada amounted to roughly $32.84 billion. The trade covers a diverse range of vehicles and components. Passenger vehicles represent a significant share of this trade, with Canada both importing and exporting large numbers to and from the U.S. In 2023, nearly half of U.S. motor vehicle and parts imports came from Canada at 15% and Mexico at 35%, highlighting North America's integrated automotive industry. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has outlined an extensive plan to counter President Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. Trudeau has openly criticized the tariffs, warning of their damaging effects on both Canadian industries and American consumers. He pointed out that such tariffs would drive up costs in areas like automobiles, lumber, and oil. During a press briefing, Trudeau stated, "American people are not the target. We hope that eventually common sense will prevail." Ontario Premier Doug Ford noted that the province is considering limiting electricity exports to U.S. states such as Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. In 2023, Ontario's electricity exports powered about 1.5 million American homes. Ford clarified that such actions would be a last resort, but they are under serious review to safeguard Canadian interests. In the initial phase, Canada plans to enforce retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products valued at approximately 37 billion Canadian dollars. The targeted items include citrus juices, ceramic containers, and certain spirits. While the full list has yet to be officially published, reports suggest that Canada is evaluating tariffs on a variety of American goods, including orange juice, especially from Florida, a major citrus exporter, steel products, which could affect U.S. steel manufacturers, ceramic goods such as sinks and toilets, dairy products, particularly from states like Wisconsin, and dishwashers manufactured in states such as Michigan. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has called a snap election for February 27, 2025, seeking a strong mandate to counter the proposed U.S. tariffs. Ford warns that these tariffs could dramatically harm Ontario's economy and result in massive job losses. He is urging voter support to implement measures including retaliatory tariffs on American goods and the removal of U.S.-made alcohol from store shelves to defend the province's interests. Canada is a key crude oil supplier to the United States, accounting for roughly 60% of U.S. crude oil imports. Imposing a 25% tariff on Canadian crude could disrupt this supply chain, raising costs for U.S. refiners and in turn leading to higher fuel prices for consumers. Analysts caution that such tariffs would unsettle energy markets and drive up American fuel prices. In response to President Trump's announcement of imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian imports starting February 1, 2025, former Canadian Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, who is running for the Liberal Party leadership, has proposed targeted retaliatory measures. Freeland advocates for a 100% tariff on U.S. wine, beer, spirits, and Tesla vehicles, aiming to pressure influential American stakeholders and political allies of Trump. Her strategy focuses on products from Republican-leaning states and associates of Trump, such as Tesla CEO Elon Musk. She emphasizes the need for Canada to deliver a clear message. Any economic aggression toward Canada will be met with significant countermeasures. The proposed U.S. tariffs threaten to disrupt the deeply integrated North American economy, where goods worth approximately $3.6 billion cross the U.S.-Canada border daily. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has pledged a forceful but reasonable response, acknowledging the potential challenges ahead. The United States maintains significant reliance on energy imports from Canada and Mexico, particularly in the oil sector. In 2023, Canada was the largest foreign supplier of energy-related products to the U.S., accounting for 48.5% of total imports valued at $26.8 billion, while Mexico was the second largest supplier, contributing 99.3% or $24.3 billion as of November 2024. U.S. crude oil imports averaged 6.6 million barrels per day, with Canada exporting approximately 4 million barrels per day, and Mexico providing about 453,000 barrels per day. The U.S. refining industry is particularly dependent on heavier-grade crude oils from Canada and Mexico. Midwest refineries process about 70% of Canada's oil imports, highlighting the regional reliance on Canadian crude. In 2023, the U.S. imported approximately 8 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas, with Canada being the primary source. However, the U.S. has also become a net exporter of natural gas, exporting about 13.6 billion cubic feet per day in December 2023, with significant volumes directed to Mexico. In the same year, the U.S. imported approximately 38.92 terawatt-hours of electricity from Canada and Mexico, with Canada serving as the predominant supplier, accounting for over 33 terawatt-hours of these imports. Notably, U.S. electricity imports from Mexico have increased over the past decade, rising from less than 2 terawatt-hours in 2010 to more than 5 terawatt-hours in 2023. The cross-border electricity trade is facilitated by multiple interconnections between the U.S. and its neighbors, which are crucial for grid stability and meeting regional energy demands. For instance, the U.S. and Canada have a highly integrated electricity grid, with power flowing in both directions to balance supply and demand. Although in 2023 the U.S. remained a net importer of Canadian electricity on an annual basis, there was a notable shift in trade patterns during the fall of 2023, when the electricity trade between the two countries became more balanced. This change was partly due to reduced hydropower generation in Canada, caused by drought conditions, which led to increased U.S. exports to Canada during that period. The United States imports a significant number of vehicles from Canada, reflecting the deeply integrated nature of the North American automotive supply chain. In 2024, General Motors, GM, imported approximately 750,000 vehicles from Canada and Mexico combined, with a substantial portion originating from Canada. These imports include some of GM's most popular models, such as the Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra, full-sized pickups, as well as mid-sized SUVs. Canada occupies a pivotal position in North America's automotive supply chain. In 2023, vehicles ranked as the country's second-largest export, valued at $51 billion, and 93% of these exports were bound for the United States, underscoring Canada's integral role in feeding its neighbor. Major manufacturers such as General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, Volkswagen, Toyota, and Honda maintain vital production facilities across Canada, supplying a substantial volume of vehicles to American consumers. Let's take a quick pause. If you've enjoyed the video so far, please hit the like button. It helps us reach a broader audience. Sharing your thoughts or feedback in the comments makes an even bigger impact. Thank you for watching. Now let's dive back in. Several automakers depend heavily on their Canadian operations. General Motors produces the Chevrolet Silverado, heavy-duty trucks, electric vans, and V8 engines in 3 Canadian plants. Ford runs an assembly plant in Oakville, Ontario, set to begin manufacturing a larger F-Series pickup truck in 2026. Stellantis manages 2 factories in Ontario, in Windsor and Brampton, assembling various Chrysler and Jeep models. Volkswagen is investing $7 billion Canadian dollars, approximately $4.9 billion, in a battery gigafactory in St. Thomas, Ontario, slated for production in 2027. The imposition of a 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican imports would carry significant repercussions. S&P Global Mobility estimates that a 25% tariff on a $25,000 vehicle from Canada or Mexico would raise its price by about $6,250. Analysts at Wells Fargo project that tariffs would cost Detroit's leading automakers billions of dollars each year. For GM, annual costs could reach $10 billion under a 5% tariff, $25 billion under a 10% tariff, and $56 billion at 25%. Ford and Stellantis face similar exposures with higher costs. Automakers may be compelled to pass these expenses on to buyers, potentially dampening demand. The tariff threat has already weighed on stock performance. For instance, GM shares have underperformed despite robust earnings in 2024. In 2023, Canada and Mexico produced a combined 5.3 million vehicles, nearly 4.4 million of which were shipped to the United States. Canada's auto industry is deeply integrated with that of the U.S., supporting smooth cross-border production and distribution. Mexico, meanwhile, contributes an even larger share of assembled vehicles and auto parts for the U.S. market. It exports 86.9% of its auto parts production to the United States. Manufacturers with the highest share of U.S. sales derived from Mexican production face the most substantial tariff risks: Volkswagen at 43%, Nissan at 27%, Stellantis at 23%, GM at 22%, Ford at 15%, Honda at 13%, Toyota at 8%, and Hyundai at 8%. These figures illustrate the extensive interdependencies of the North American automotive sector and the potentially profound consequences of new trade barriers. Besides the auto industry, the U.S. also heavily relies on Canadian goods in other sectors. In agriculture, the United States imports a significant volume of agricultural products from Canada, including nearly $3 billion in beef each year. The proposed tariffs could result in higher prices for these goods in the U.S. market. Experts predict that tariffs may boost food prices by as much as 25% in some cases, adding roughly $185 annually to the grocery bills of American families, with lower-income households being hit particularly hard. The Canadian government has indicated that any retaliatory actions would be applied evenly across all regions and would not single out any specific province or sector. Energy and Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson stressed that Canada's response would aim to affect American interests more than Canadian ones, without unduly burdening any one sector or region. In a subsequent phase, should the United States move forward with its tariff imposition, Canada is ready to escalate its retaliatory measures to impact up to 110 billion CAD in U.S. products. This step is intended to exert significant economic pressure in reaction to U.S. actions. As a more drastic option, Canada is also considering cutting energy exports to the United States, given that Canada supplies around 20% of the oil consumed in the US. This action could have serious repercussions for American energy markets. However, this proposal has generated debate among Canadian provincial leaders. For example, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith opposes reducing oil exports, warning of potential economic downsides for the province. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly has announced plans to confer with counterparts in allied nations, including Britain, Mexico, and several European Union members, to forge a united front against the potential US tariffs. This diplomatic push seeks to coordinate responses and explore collective measures to counter the economic impact of the proposed tariffs. On January 27, 2025, former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, who is vying to replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's Prime Minister, proposed a retaliation list aimed at US goods in response to the possible 25% tariffs on Canadian products imposed by President Trump. Freeland stressed that Canada's countermeasures should be precisely and painfully targeted, citing Florida orange growers, Wisconsin dairy farmers, and Michigan dishwasher manufacturers as potential targets. The proposed list would cover products valued at 200 billion CAD, approximately 139 billion US dollars. She also proposed barring American companies from bidding on Canadian federal procurement contracts and convening an international summit to coordinate responses to US challenges. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been actively outlining Canada's stance, highlighting that US tariffs would raise costs for American consumers and disrupt vital supply chains. He has emphasized the deep economic interdependence between the two nations and the mutual benefits of preserving open trade. These initiatives illustrate Canada's multifaceted strategy to counter the potential imposition of US tariffs, balancing immediate economic countermeasures with diplomatic outreach and strategic public communication. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, which took effect on July 1, 2020, is a comprehensive trade deal that replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. The USMCA was crafted to foster free trade among the three nations by reducing or eliminating tariffs and enhancing economic integration. Key elements of the USMCA include market access. The agreement secures preferential access for goods and services traded among the United States, Mexico, and Canada, aiming to streamline cross-border commerce. Automotive industry rules of origin. The USMCA raises the regional content requirement for automobiles to 75%, up from 62.5% under NAFTA, to qualify for tariff-free treatment, designed to boost production within North America. Labor and environmental standards. The agreement introduces stricter labor rights and environmental protections, including measures to support collective bargaining in Mexico, and commitments to uphold environmental laws. Digital trade. The USMCA includes provisions to facilitate digital trade, such as banning customs duties on electronic transmissions and ensuring that data flows freely across borders. President Trump's proposal to impose a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico appears to contradict the core principles of the USMCA, which emphasize tariff reduction and free trade among the member nations. Such unilateral tariff actions could be seen as violations of the agreement's terms and might spark disputes under its established mechanisms. Over the years, the relationship between Canada and the United States has evolved over more than 2 centuries, marked by phases of conflict, cooperation, and deepening economic and cultural bonds. In the early 19th century, tensions between the United States and British North America, present-day Canada, culminated in the War of 1812. The United States, motivated by territorial expansion and a desire to assert its sovereignty, attempted to invade Canada. The conflict featured several pivotal battles, including the burning of York, now Toronto, by American forces, and the subsequent burning of Washington, D.C., by British troops. The war concluded in a stalemate with the Treaty of Ghent in 1814, restoring pre-war boundaries while leaving many issues unresolved. Nevertheless, the conflict helped forge a sense of Canadian identity and led to enduring peace between the two nations, with the border becoming demilitarized and evolving into the world's longest undefended boundary. Economic integration and trade agreements deepened with the 1854 Canadian-American Reciprocity Treaty, which promoted free trade in natural resources such as timber, coal, and fish. Although the treaty was rescinded by the United States in 1866, it laid the groundwork for future cooperation. In the 20th century, the two countries further cemented their economic relationship through agreements like NAFTA in 1994, creating one of the world's largest free trade zones, and its successor, the USMCA, in 2020, which updated and modernized trade relations to address contemporary issues such as digital commerce and labor rights. During World War II, Canada and the United States bolstered military cooperation through the establishment of the Permanent Joint Board on Defense in 1940, creating a framework for continental defense collaboration. This alliance continued into the Cold War, with the formation of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, in 1958, a binational organization responsible for aerospace warning and control across North America. These alliances underscored the shared security interests of both nations and their commitment to mutual defense. Beyond economic and defense ties, Canada and the United States share profound cultural and social bonds. Roughly 400,000 people cross the Canada-US border daily, fostering personal relationships, tourism, and business interactions. The two countries also share linguistic similarities, popular culture, and common values, which further solidify their connection. As of the time of posting, there has been no official confirmation regarding the details of U.S. tariffs on Canada, nor has any further information been provided by relevant authorities. However, indications suggest that Canada intends to withhold the specifics of its countermeasures until they are officially implemented. This approach may be strategic, allowing the Canadian government to assess the full scope of the U.S. tariffs before responding in a measured and calculated manner. Regardless of the exact terms of these trade measures, the escalating tensions between the United States and Canada are already having substantial economic implications. Both countries have long-standing economic, political, and trade relations with deeply integrated supply chains, shared industries, and a high volume of cross-border commerce. Any disruption in this relationship can lead to ripple effects across various sectors, impacting businesses, workers, and consumers on both sides. At this stage, it remains uncertain how these developments will unfold. The coming days and weeks will be crucial in determining the next steps from both governments and the potential consequences for trade, investment, and economic stability. As the situation evolves, stakeholders in both nations will need to closely monitor official statements and policy decisions to understand the full impact of these measures. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. We sincerely appreciate you joining us today. If our content resonated with you or sparked inspiration, please consider expressing your support by liking the video and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support holds immense value for us. You can watch another video on our channel, which is now on the screen.